IIS and other. And you can also, if you are Inspire Fellow, or no, if you are Inspire, if you are getting Inspire scholarship, there are chances you can apply for Inspire fellowship also. That is for the PhD. And even if you are not Inspire scholar, you can still apply for Inspire fellowship for PhD. And there is also exam INET, which is for PhD admission in like astrophysics related things. So these are the like, I think like all the like exams, competitive exam you can try applying. And if you apply to more of these exams, there's more probability to get into like PhD institute. So like for the thing to get like, this is the like the base, like you have to like start with this only. And then like you can, after like, and after applying to these like after getting some rank or something, you can apply to different PhD programs, like for example IISc, IISERs, IITs, like wherever you want to go. And there will be interview, and they will also offer letter. And this is like very standard thing. It is like, or like followed everywhere in like India. So one thing about like thing I want to clear is like the for like the competitive exam, GATE, CSR, and whatever. So the exam content is just like some core subjects of your third and fourth year of IISER Mohali, like this statistical mechanics, classical mechanics, just the basic things. And like you can like, it doesn't require much time. You may prepare these things in like a week or so, week or two, like and if you like try previous year question papers, will be like much more helpful. And so I already told about Inspire. Like you can like the benefit of, one benefit of Inspire is like if you get inspired, there's like after Inspire fellowship you can apply for Inspire. You can become Inspire faculty also, and then like you can directly get the faculty positions. I'm not sure like it requires postdoc also or not. I'm not sure about that, but like it is good if you have Inspire also. So so the thing is like the some institute takes PhDs biannually, like twice a year, like IISERs, and some institute will take only once a year, like IISc. They will just take once a year. And there is also advantage of PMRF, so you can apply to PRMF. And like there, if you want more about want to know about more about PMRF, I can tell. But like the basic thing is like there are advantage of getting PMRF, but the chances you will get PMRF will like it's very rare. So like so you also get two. You can apply twice, one through direct entry and one through lateral entry. Direct entry, like you have to first get admission in some institute, one of the national institute, and then you can directly apply to PMRF. Other thing is like you complete 1 year of your PhD and then you apply for the PMR. That is called lateral entry, and the first one I said was direct entry. So there are two things. And in IISERs you can take admission if you score like the like minimum CPI like 7.5 or 8. I'm not sure about it, but like you can directly if you have like that hit that wall like that figure like for minimum CPI requirement, you can directly get admission to PhD. It will just like there is no require for interview and anything. Just it will just get directly at IISER. But like why go for IISER? If you are already studying at IISER, I will just suggest like you go for like better institutes like ISC or ICTS. So like what I consider like good institute better than ICER. So uh,
Uh,
so
Excuse me,
and yes.
yeah, are you sure that IITs have their admissions annually? Because I thought IITs also do this biannually.
Okay, I'm not sure about it. Like, but like some maybe it's like that. Some IITs do it annually and some do it biannually.
Yeah, because IIT Bombay, I'm
IIT
pretty
Bombay,
sure does it biannually.
IIT Bombay do it biannually, right?
Yeah, and I think IIT Guwahati also. So yeah, I mean this must be checked.
Right, right. So I may be wrong. I'm wrong about this thing. Like that, we have to like keep track of that. Like whether the institute take the admission annually and biannually. So you have to like keep better track of it. I think IITs take this admission biannually. Like IIT Bombay, I know. IIT Madras, I think they take it. I'm not sure. Okay, so whether like other institute like PRL and IMSC, they take it like once a year only, and same goes for TIFL and sister institutes. So and in interviews they will ask just basic physics, like they will tell you like what are your like favorite three subjects, and they will just going to ask question about that only. So and they are just, if you don't know the like in these interviews, like people get panicked and like they are just checking your confidence and whether things basic things or not. It may be like they will ask you, so it is very later part, like but like the thing is like they will in interview they are going to ask you questions, and like if you just have to be like say if you don't know the answer, just say you don't know the answer, and they will help you in like figuring out the answer. So this goes on. And yes, so and also this I just want to mention, like since you are like going for like PhD opportunities, you can also, you will be like applying for gate exam. After getting gate exam, you can apply for job opportunity, but then like, this part we will cover in like some other series, but like that's all I want to convey. And there is one more thing I want to advise, it's that for condensed matter physics, it's better if you go outside India. So why I'm saying this, like the before January this 2021, I also wanted to do PhD in India, but I contacted one of the professor at the IISER Pune, and he told me that don't do PhD in India if you want to do in condensed matter physics. So the reason is this: like we think like so the experimental facilities are like good, not good. Like I'm not sure about the experimental facilities, but I thought like we can do at least theoretical work in India, because it requires like not like much resources, and like even like less funded institute can help you. But the thing is like in theory also you might need to do some simulation and stuff. And my personal experience with the IISER Mohali master thesis is that the cluster for doing computation at IISER Mohali, that sometimes the cluster was not working. So I asked my IISER Kolkata professor to give me his cluster of IISER Kolkata, and there was some VPN problem with the IISER Kolkata cluster. So he gave me other cluster, RI cluster, and also SINP. So RRI cluster was working for like 3 to 4 months, which is like good enough. But the SINP cluster was like working for only 1 month. So but like problem with the RI cluster is like I was able to only run 10 jobs. So what I want to say is like resources are not good at India. So if you are getting chance to do PhD abroad, go there because of just resources. If your work is purely theoretical, you just want to do analytical work, you may want to stick in India. And there are very good people in India. For in condensed matter, I know like there are very good people in ICTS, like Abhishek Dhar and Subro, and these are the people I know, and like they are very very good. Like you can compare them with the good people at Max Planck, so they are good, and like that's all I want to say.
Okay, thanks a lot, Karthik. So we have another presentation that me and Abhijit will be sort of discussing with you on similar lines. But any questions particular to Karthik, please ask. This point about condensed matter is something that my guide also told me. So I was also told that especially for numerical simulations of condensed matter, there are other groups abroad that are doing quite well. Then we should try to join. Okay, um, I will start sharing my screen and stuff for the next um, presentation, but please feel free to ask Karthik any questions. Present. Oh. Um, do people see this? Abhijit, are you seeing?
Hello, Karthik. Do you want to respond to this question?
Oh, there's a question.
Uh, okay. Data. Is there any CPI criteria? So there is no CPI. They just require minimum CPI, like whatever, like 7 CPI, 8 CPI, depending on the institute. What I found out was like they give more preference to the competitive exam, which I was taking. Like some institute, for example, IISC, they give preference to like GATE or net scores, but like in ICERs, what I found out was like you don't need any like this criteria doesn't hold like the good rank in the competitive exam. But like CPI, like they just will ask for like some institute will say okay I want CPI more than 8, some will say want more than 7.5, like that. So CPI is not that big criteria. Some places it may be 7, but like just a minimum requirement. So
In fact, I don't think there's any institute that demands 8 CPI. I think 6, 6.5, and 7 is the norm at most places.
yeah, I even believe like that even 55%, they say like 55%, minimum 55% in
Right.
MSc is
Yeah,
enough.
having a CPI of 8 will have other advantages, which we will discuss. But as far as I remember, 8 is something which is not demanded by any institute.
Hmm. Yes, same.
Yes,
So
same. So for PMRF things that may be helpful, but like for admission criteria everything it's not so helpful. Like that's
yeah, exactly. So maybe I can start out with this next presentation. It will be very similar to Karthik's, but we still have some different points to make. Um, so Abhijit, you can see this, right? You guys can see this?
Yes, I can see this. And
yes.
Karthik, can you mute yourself meanwhile because there's some noise from your end?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So we'll just add upon some points. Feel free to interrupt at any point. So first thing we wanted to address is something that Karthik also addressed and was spoken in the bio session. Why might you want to do a PhD in India? There are some very attractive, positive uh, reasons. Like Karthik mentioned, even for condensed matter, there are some amazing groups, very accomplished physicists, and they may be easier to reach. For instance, if you want to work with a very prominent professor in Europe, it might be very hard to get to them. But if you want to work with a prominent prof in India, you just have to qualify the exam, and you just have to get into the university. And once you get in, you can just go and ask them if they have positions and work with them. So in that sense, I feel like you have a chance to work with some big people in India. Also, this was something mentioned in the bio session also. You can build useful contacts. You can stay connected with the people who are doing research in your field in India. This will be useful in case you want to join back in India for like a professor or like a faculty position. You know everyone. If you stay here for 5 years, you will know everyone who is doing work in your field. Like you know everything about them, and they know you, and they know like how you work. So all of that will be useful when you apply back for a faculty position at some point. um, Another point is that it's closer to home. We've spent a lot of time with family over the past year, and they're growing older. So I was also really intending on doing a PhD in India. By the way, I will be going to France instead for my PhD, and Abhijit will be here in ISC for the high energy physics department. So um, okay, but with that said, there's negatives also. Like if you want to do experimental physics, you seriously have to consider like whether or not we have the equipment to do so. You have to like do some research and see how the lab facilities are, and you can ask like faculty in our campus and other campuses. There's another the you will if you go abroad, you will have this international research experience. You will know how things are done there. I've heard that PhD programs in some PhD programs in US are quite rigorous and they train you well. So yeah, so it's basically I would suggest you apply everywhere, and then based on the options that you get, you decide which one works best for you. So don't from the outset itself, don't think that you will not apply to India, because there's some very useful things that come out of applying to India, as you will see, especially the interview process and everything. They're very, very helpful. Um, so okay, so I've just listed out some good institutes for various fields. This is not an exhaustive list. These are institutes where most of us applied, and we applied to a couple of more also. I would suggest that if you, let's say by next year, February or March, if you get to the point where you want to apply to India and you've decided like you will apply, I would suggest you apply to as many institutes as you can. If you want to do astronomy, don't apply to only IUCA or only like this the joint astronomy program of ISC. Apply everywhere, because the in the interview process you will not be asked what your specific research interests are. You will not be asked like um, you any particular questions about your field or a research problem. You will All the interviews will basically test your basic knowledge, and they will really help you. So my suggestion would be to, if you want to apply to Indian universities, apply to as many as you can, because the interviews will really help. So
Yeah,
okay,
and I would like to add something here is that do not, I mean, of course, I mean, for example, for astrophysics, we have IUCAN, and for high energy physics, we have ICTS and all. But do not neglect IITs. So, I mean,
yeah, absolutely,
the reason is that there are one or two faculty members in every IIT who are very, very good. For
right.
example, there are two people at IIT Roorkee who are very good in high energy physics. There's one person in IIT Bombay who's perhaps the best instrumentalist in the whole of India and one of the best in the world. So I mean, have a look at IITs also. Do not neglect them.
Yeah, absolutely. Even thanks, Abhijit. But even for places like quantum physics, for places like if you want to do experiments, in general, IITs have a lot of funding. So the laboratories at IITs are quite good. And like for example, IIT Madras, um, IIT Bombay has like nice quantum physics labs, and so yeah, do not do not neglect IITs at all. There's some very people. There's a lot of people doing very like pure research, like mathematical physics and all of that. So yeah, okay. What else? So the first step is of course writing national exams, like Karthik pointed out. There are three main ones: the NET, the JEST, and the GATE. Keep in mind their validity. So JEST is valid only for 1 year. So um, you shouldn't write it too early in advance. Um, and also note, like Abhijit said, CSIR net is different from UGC net. So some people apply to the UGC net exam. For science people, we should apply for the CSIR net and not the UGC net. So um, another suggestion that we have is that we would strongly encourage you to certainly write net and jest. And we felt that the GATE scores aren't as important as the net and just ones, because some of our friends got good GATE scores but still were not called for interviews. But if you had good net scores, you were. So maybe it's because like a lot of IITians apply for GATE and it's more like an engineering exam. But if you have time, write all three, but certainly write net and just. So
Uh,
okay,
Sorry, I just
go
want to
ahead.
interrupt. So I would like to make so the thing is like in gate like recent situation pandemic situation is like that the institutes are not getting good funding. So I'm just familiar with the IISER Kolkata.
Right,
So because of this not good funding, they are relying on like students who have their own fellowship, and like CSR gives you own fellowship.
right.
So if you apply through Gate, then institute has to like give you stipend
Ah,
and all that.
I see.
So
Maybe that's
so
why.
that's yes.
Yeah, maybe
So
that's why. Okay,
yeah, it's yeah.
right,
So I will also recommend like getting CS and NET is like much better than like get yeah right.
right.
Just
Okay,
okay.
that makes
Continue.
sense. Yeah, thanks, Karthik. Okay. So as Karthik said, there's other exams also, the TIFR, GS, and the IUCA test, but these are specific to universities. The above three are general, and just as valid for every university in India. So you should consider writing these exams. How do you do well in these exams? Well, uh, we have just one suggestion. At least me and Abhijit, we felt that the exam will ask you a lot of things, but if you are confident in a couple of subjects, then you should play to your strengths and just do them properly. I think you will be able to do well. So when I wrote my exam, I just knew like these 3 or 4 courses and I was confident in them. And I just basically attempted only the questions I knew and I tried to be quick. That's what helped me. So it isn't hard. So when before I wrote the exam, I was of the opinion that these exams are very difficult and I won't be able to do well. But I ended up getting a good rank. So certainly don't think that you are not capable of doing well in these exams. You try to do past year question papers, like 3 or 4 of them. Try to see how you're doing well in time management and try to improve. And I'm sure you will do well because we've been trained well in our third and fourth year. Okay.
Yeah,
So
Shashank, can you,
go ahead.
revert back to the previous slide?
Yes.
I want to add something. So one thing is that Shashank said that jest is valid only for 1 year, and so, it might be too early for you to write at this stage. But let me tell you that due to the pandemic, the timelines of these exams have been completely,
Mm,
thrown out of gear. So
right.
yeah, so just I think used to happen in January, but this time it happened in April. And so sometimes so this year some of the institutes already were done with their admissions by the time just actually happened. So I would say write just at the earliest opportunity you get to do so.
Mm,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. And
Right.
yeah, if had we written just last year we did not write just because we thought that it is of no use. But now we realize had we done it back then it would have been much better for us. Yeah, the
Yeah.
second thing that I want to specifically mention here is that, so this is something that you will not find anywhere at all. And this is only a personal observation that I and Shashank have made. And we ourselves are not completely sure whether this is true. But the thing is the following. So, the net exam used to be conducted by CBSE, I guess, till 2 years ago. 2 years
Mm,
ago, the responsibility of conducting the net exam was handed over to NTA, National Testing Agency, which also conducts a lot of other exams. Now we have, we look back at the previous questions when we were preparing for the exam, and we ourselves also got good ranks in the exam. And we have found that since the time NTA has started conducting net, the emphasis has shifted. So when CBSE used to conduct the exam, the emphasis was a lot on, not
moving
many
formulas.
different types, knowing in detail the, let's say, the syllabus that is covered in usual masters level curricula of the Indian universities. But now it is more like, they are trying to, gauge the how good you are at your bare basics in physics. So for example, many of the questions that are asked in the net exam since the time MTA has started conducting it, go back to what you studied in your maybe class 11 or class 12, or maybe your first and second year here at IISER Mohali. This was not the case when CBS used to conduct it. So there has been a shift in emphasis. Although we have only two examples to back this up, because of the pandemic, the exam has been conducted only for two, okay, only on two occasions. But I think this is going to be a trend that is going to go on.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Abhijit. Okay, let's move ahead also. Yeah, so after you write the exams, you will start applying for a PhD. So one thing which is nice is I'm sure you guys will apply to other places as well, abroad and everything. One good thing about Indian applications is that they start around February to April. I think they basically start in March, April. So you will by then know whether or not you're getting a position, at least in the US, like around March you will know. So you can make an informed decision. If you feel like uh, applying, you can apply. But I would still suggest, even if you have gotten the position, there's a lot of uncertainty because of the pandemic. I know of people who have gotten PhD positions have not have been able to go because simply flights are not there and visa they don't get. um, Apart from that, I would still suggest you to consider applying to Indian places, especially because the interview procedure is very, very useful for you, as we will discuss. But so before we go there, there are some nice things about applying for a PhD in India, specifically for the application process. The first thing is that, like as Karthik said, you don't need to have a good CPI. If you have a CPI, I think 7.57, that also like you're very good to apply for a PhD here. And Secondly, they're not stringent on research experiences, recommendations, SOPs. So if you're someone who hasn't done an internship, or if you're someone who is struggling to look for a letter of recommendations, like there aren't many people who can give a recommendation for you, you should consider applying to India also, because what happens is these three things I've mentioned are really important when you apply to the US. And they, if you don't have like good research experience or good letter of recommendations, you might not fare well as compared to other applicants. However, when you apply to India, it's people don't really care about these that much. You will still have to write an SOP. You will still have to give letter of recommendation for some institutes. But as of how I see it, how what I have learned is that people don't read your letter of recommendations all the time. You can submit your application without a letter of recommendation. They will still interview you. They'll still select you. What I have heard is that they can contact your referees after that requesting for a letter of recommendation just as a background check to see how you are and everything. So some of the people whose names I gave for letter of recommendation were not contacted by some universities, but they were contacted by others. So it isn't as important, basically, what I'm saying. And SOPs, you can write a very generic SOP. Like if the audience is applying to the US, let me tell you, you will spend days writing your SOP. Like you will spend so much time trying to explain to people why you're good at physics rather than actually doing the physics. So you won't have to do any of that when you apply to India. So something else I find very useful is that you can afford to be confused about your interests. And this is something I personally felt did not work out for me when I applied to the US, because in general, they prefer people who know what they want to do for right reasons. Like if you already know what you want to do, you will probably do it well. Um, but in Indian applications, you can apply to any university with any background as long as you clear the exam, of course. And you don't like I can apply to an astronomy program without any astronomy knowledge. So I got into the astronomy program of IISc, and I don't know any astronomy. Like I know zero astronomy. So you can be confused. Like, you can have multiple interests. You can be like, I want to do biology, or I want to do high energy, like Abhijit. Uh, and you can still apply. You can Nobody will stop you from applying, and you still have a chance of getting interviewed if your exam scores are good. So lastly, they're very cheap. So we applied to like 15 places. The total cost is like 5,000 rupees. And you will, if in case you apply to the US, you will spend a lot more money. Um, Lastly, something I call like a fair and simple procedure. The applications to these universities are very simple. You can do them in 15 minutes. Why I say fair is because when you apply to a US university, and let's say you apply and you don't get in, there are like so many reasons why you could not have gotten. Like you don't know why you didn't make it, and even if you ask for personal feedback on your application, you most likely will not be given. So you are left in the dark. You don't know why you didn't make it, but because there's several reasons, like maybe your recommenders weren't well known, maybe people just didn't read your recommendation, maybe someone else had better CPI. But all of that doesn't happen when you apply to India. So in that sense, I would suggest like you also consider applying to India. There's cons of this, which is basically the same thing. You have to have good exam scores, apart from um, the CFTI option that Karthik mentioned, that we will discuss again. But in general, you really need to have a good exam score to get interviewed. And research experience won't matter as much, because I mean, you can have good research experience, you can have good CPI, you can have worked very hard in college, but you can simply have not gotten a good exam score, and that might affect whether or not you get interviewed. So yeah. Abhijit, do you have anything to say here?
Well, no, I think you've covered it all.
Okay, so yeah, so all of these factors you please keep in mind. So this is what happens February to April. Now, what happens in May to June is you have finished your application and they will shortlist you. What we have seen is that
Yeah,
in
wait, wait.
general,
Yeah, I
yeah,
just
yeah,
have to add. So, I mean, since applications happen, I mean, yeah, I think they start accepting applications sometime in April or something. So, it's better to, I mean, qualify the exam, the net exam in December. So, it happens twice a year, December and June. So, it's better to get it qualified in December. Okay.
yeah, exactly. So something we noticed that a rank of lesser than 100 is a safe bet to get interviewed by a couple of places, like by most places. For specifically for IISc, where I was interviewed, this year they decided to select only like 30 people, whereas last year they were calling people less than 100 ranks. So this year, because of the pandemic, they chose to interview fewer people. That also might happen to you, so just keep that in mind. If you One suggestion I have is, if you have a good rank in net already, do consider writing the net exam again in case you would like to just try to get a better rank. Because so my experience was that my rank was 30, and I thought I will absolutely be called for interviews in many places, but I was not called by IISc. I mean, I was called by one department of IISc, but not all three. So yeah, that's just an experience I wanted to share, so you can think of that. But in general, like most other universities, like institutes, you get below 100 or 150 even. So don't think that if you have more than 100 you can't apply. You do apply, and like people do shortlist you. So especially because of the second point, because this year when we gave interviews, some institutes decided to shortlist more people here in the first point, and then conduct another exam before they chose who to interview. And I think that's good, because that gives some more people a second chance. So a lot of institutes like IIT Bombay, IIT Kanpur, Abhijit can suggest more. Like I remember writing a lot of exams. So um, this is also nice. So you can keep this in mind, that they will, especially because of the pandemic, they may conduct another exam before they choose to interview you. Okay. Um,
Yeah,
so Abhijit, maybe you can talk to.
yeah. Please go back to the previous slide first.
Yes.
Yeah. So, as Shashank mentioned, I mean that even if you have a very good rank in net right now, do write it again. I mean,
Yeah.
and you will start seeing benefits of having a higher rank. I mean, if you join a PhD in India. So I mean, there's something called Shyama Prasad Mukherjee Fellowship that pays you a little more money. So the usual fellowship in India is 31,000 as JRF and 35,000 per month for SRF. But if you get Shama Prasad Mukherjee Fellowship, I think it's 35,000 and 40,000 for JRF and SRF respectively. But that fellowship is open only for, I think, top 10 rank holders in the net exam. Yeah, so I mean, but and I've heard that having a stellar net exam also significantly improves your chances of getting PMRF. So yeah,
Right.
I mean, try always keep trying getting a better and better rank in net.
Yeah. Yeah, so I learned this the hard way. So don't make the same mistake I made. If you have time to write the net again, do write the net again. Okay. So so yeah. So what happens if you don't have a good exam score? And so Abhijit, maybe you can tell them about this.
Yeah, so not many
Karthik
people
mentioned this.
know about this, and even I think we also came to know about this quite late. So, in several institutes in India, there's a centrally funded technical institutes category for taking PhD applicants. So, what happens is that if you are from a centrally funded technical institute, which comprises of IISERs, the IITs, and in some case, yeah, some institutes consider NITs also. So if your master's or undergraduate education is from one of these institutes, you might get called for interview even if you have not cleared any exam at all. You just have to have some CPI of greater than 7.5 or 8 or something. That completely varies from institute to institute. So for example, IISc had this in it. Yeah, the I mean the one thing that you have to keep in mind is that this is not very well advertised. So you have to really go and read the information brochures of the admission
Mm,
brochures of the institutes and see whether they are taking students through this category. But from my experience, I can tell you IISc does that. So even if you have not qualified any exam, but if you are interested in going to IISc, do apply to IISc. If you I mean have a CPA of greater than whatever is the cutoff, I think it is 8. And IIT Bombay has it, and many other institutes have this category. Yeah, and IISER Pune also calls you for interviews directly if you have a CPA of, I think, greater than 7 or 7.5. I don't remember the exact figures. But IISER Pune and IISER Bhopal also will call you for interviews even if you have not qualified any of the exams we mentioned before. So, in case you want to stay in India but have not been able to qualify an exam on time, or maybe, I mean, given the pandemic conditions, the exams are not being conducted regularly also. So do keep this in mind. The one disadvantage of this is that, I mean, so when you apply through this category, so then the application becomes more like a European application rather than an Indian application. So for example, even if you have the CPI of more than, let's say, whatever is the cutoff, it's not guaranteed that you will be called for interview. So in that sense, I mean, it again gets that shady as the European applications.
Mhm.
And I mean, even after you do well in interviews, sometimes they might choose to take you and sometimes not. So I mean, in that, yeah, I mean, in this category, they start to look at your whole profile, and they'll look at your CPI, they'll look at your research experience and all. So this is more like a window of European style applications to get into Indian institutes. Yeah, so this is we wanted to flag. So I have also mentioned Ashoka University because I specifically wanted to mention this, that Ashoka University in Sonipat has just started out. So it's very, I think, the only, not the only private university, of course, but I think it is the only private university that's doing really well in India. So if you go to the physics department of Ashoka University, and even the bio department is really good. So the faculty that they have is really, really good. And for
Good.
example, the ex-director of TIFR right now is a faculty member at Ashoka University, and they have very good exposure. And one faculty member at Ashoka I was in touch with told me that they are in process of hiring 4 to 5 more faculty members in the next 7 or 8 months. So the department is going to expand. And I put Ashoka University here because to apply to Ashoka University also you do not need to have qualified any of those exams. So keep an eye on Ashoka University also, and if you see a faculty member with in whose work you are interested, make sure you apply.
Yeah. Okay. Um, what else? Okay, so this is probably just the last thing we want to talk about, and the most important. The interviews, once you get shortlisted, will happen sometime in May to July. So I spent my summer, and so did Abhijit, giving loads and loads of interviews. But I can tell you that the biggest reason why I would advise you to apply to Indian institutes is the interviews, because they teach you an enormous amount. So, like, they teach you how, at least, different interviews are different, but at least, like, they were really a very, very beneficial experience for me. So the best institutes, so one thing, a correlation that we observed, me and Abhijit, was that the better and better the institute is, the more basic the questions they ask you. So they won't ask you like deep condensed matter questions. They won't ask you like any like deep stat mech or something, but they'll ask you basic questions, like very, very basic questions. I was asked questions like, if you have a cup of water in your hand and you start walking, why does the water fall out? And then you have to think about that, and then they asked you to calculate the oscillation, like frequency of oscillation of the water, and so on. So it really like changed the opinion, like the interviews changed my opinion about Indian universities, because they were very, very insightful. All the faculty who interviewed me were really helpful. So one thing is that they really know how to ask you good questions, and they know how to get you thinking. um, the second thing is that they don't really want you to solve the problem. Like, I got into ISC, but I can tell you that I didn't solve. They asked me like 6, 7 questions, and I was able to solve only 2 or 3 of them. But keep in mind that you should think out aloud. This is something Nikhil also said in the bio session. Always think out aloud. Tell them what you're thinking about, and they will lead you. So they just want to understand whether you're thinking properly, whether like you have the ability in you to like be guided, and they want to understand your thought process. So don't be wary of interviews. I at least really like enjoyed them. They're interested in basically how you solve problems. They Most of my interviews started out by asking what my subject of interest was, and I didn't tell them that it was condensed matter or high energy. I would just tell them things like, okay, I've been reading about quantum mechanics or stat mech. That's because that was on the in my mind at the moment. And they will ask you questions like that. So they'll ask you your favorite subject, and they'll ask you questions like that. So do prepare like your basic courses, like try to just revise them, but also like just be prepared to have fun also. I'm sure in case you get to May and July and you don't have a PhD position, it might be very stressful and you will be very scared of these interviews. I also was, but I can tell you that they aren't that bad, and they're you should think of them as learning experiences. Because so in March this year, me and Abhijit at least was very worried about how our interviews would go, and many of them did not go well, but each interview really taught us a lot. So I would suggest you to apply to as many institutes as you can. Especially speaking about IISc, I can tell you that the reason why I mentioned apply to other departments as well is because I got into the astro program of IISc and I know zero astro. Abhijit got into the high energy physics program and he has no knowledge of high energy physics, sorry to say. But that's because they don't ask you questions about astronomy or high energy. They just want to know whether you know your physics properly. So, yeah. Abhijit, maybe you could talk about your experiences.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I'll just elaborate on the point that you raised about, the better the institute, the more fundamental the types of questions that they usually ask in the interviews. So, for example, so I'll illustrate this with an example. So, let's say I want to do high energy physics. So, first of all, let me tell you, the quantum field theory is the bread and butter of high energy physics. I have not taken a single course of quantum field theory. I have taken only one course in high energy physics, that is the mandatory nuclear and particle physics course that all of you have certainly taken. I got a C in that course, and I am in, I think, yeah, one of the best places that does high energy physics in the world. So this can happen only in India. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
yeah. So yeah. Now the thing is that so when I mentioned that I want to do high energy physics at some other places, for example, in IIT Roorkee or at IIT Hyderabad, so they also have some good and competent faculty. But the nature of the interviews was that they expected me to know some high energy physics. But and as you go up, but on the contrary, when I gave my interviews at, let's say, IISc or IMSc, and so I mean other such top notch places in India. So at those places, I mean, they never expected me to know any high energy physics. So they just wanted to, get a sense of how good I am as a physicist in general. So, I mean,
Exactly.
one of the favorite questions of mine that they asked me in the high energy physics. So, this is a high energy physics interview at ISC, and around half an hour of the interview was spent in discussing why is it that, so I mean, you can also go and think about it later. I mean, I kept thinking about it for 2 days straight. That why is it that the, mileage efficiency of cars is best in the, speed bracket of 40 to 80 kilometers per hour. If you drive a car too slow, then also it's not efficient, and if you drive it too fast, then also it's not that efficient. So what drives this optimization? So yeah, I mean, these were the questions that they asked, or maybe, discussed with me. Yeah.
Yeah. So exactly. So you can see, at least based on the examples we have given, these are very exciting questions. And I would say you should attend these interviews because you might not have another chance of, being at least interacting with faculty and discussing these kind of interesting things. So, yeah, so do consider applying.
Yeah, if you like physics, they are much better than Netflix, I can tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
I
just,
also want to say one thing.
yeah, go ahead, Karthik.
So, so although I got like PhD position and like I've joined some place, but still like there was like still one more program. They just like they were like ICTS program. I applied to that program just to give interview to like because just the reason like I enjoy like you will enjoy giving interview. Like there
Exactly.
are two options for you, like either get panicked or either get like enjoy and like again like as like Shashank said and he didn't like he just gave two answers. I barely give two answers in ISC interview. Like I wasn't able to complete any. Just they just wanted to know like they don't want me to solve the whole thing. They just want to know how I will go about solving this thing. So they
Yeah.
don't need this full solution everything.
Yeah. So, okay, I hope we have convinced you to attend these interviews. I think we have. So, just some general advice with regard to just Indian or non-Indian applications. If you have interviews and after they get over, you must cover up on what you missed. I think I would say this is the the biggest, this is the only thing I did right, because of which I got into some good places in India. So I would just, if an interview went badly, I would just be sad for like a couple of hours, and I would just ensure that everything I did not answer, I picked up on that day itself. Because so at least in May and June, me and Abhijit had 15, 20 interviews. So it really helps if you cover upon what you missed, and it's a good learning opportunity. Um, Second thing is something that I want to stress upon. Do not believe that you cannot make it. At a few months ago, me, Abhijit, and I'm sure Karthik were of the opinion that getting into Indian universities is incredibly hard. And it because look, ISC takes what, 6, 7 people, and the three of us speaking to you have been able to clear their interviews, and it is not hard. So of course you have to clear the barrier of the exams, and I would advise that you work hard to try to do that. But the interviews are difficult and challenging, but you don't have to do well in them to get in. You just have to you convince them that you can think properly. So we felt that Indian institutes are very hard, and the interviews are horribly hard. We won't be able to get in. But yeah, all of this is incorrect. So yeah, we want to tell that to you now itself. And just a last advice, you will be applying to a lot of places, and you will certainly get rejected from many of them. Do not believe that a rejection means that you don't deserve a position. So your application is separate from from you. So if you get a rejection, that doesn't mean you don't deserve a PhD. It just means you got a rejection, and you should try other places, because there's so many factors that come into play, especially in abroad. Like there's just so many things that decide whether or not you make it, and there's a lot of luck involved. So just know it at the outset that you will be rejected a lot of times. Like I was rejected like 17, 18 times, and so was Abhijit and everyone. But just we've at the end, like just try to keep going, try to keep learning, and working on the subject that you like, and I'm sure at some point things will work out. So okay, any more? Yeah, Abhijit, you could talk about this.
So I just wanted to talk a little about how, I mean, about the financial viability of a PhD in India. So one thing is that I think all of you know that if you clear CS, I think at most institutes, either you are an institute fellow or you are a CSR fellow, you get paid rupees 31,000 per month for the first 2 years, and 35,000 for the next 3 years. And if you don't happen to finish your PhD in 5 years, then for the 6 year they pay you like 17 or 18,000 per month. Okay, so I know that this is not a lot of money, but I want to say three things here. One is that PMRF now is changing things a little. So, and for example, although, I mean, yeah, as Karthik said, that it's quite improbable that you will get PMRF. However, but there's still some chance. So I mean, for example, if you get into ISC, then there's, let's say, I will say 10% chance of you getting PMRF. I've been told by people at ISC that 1 in every 10 PhD student at ISC now gets PMRF, at least in the physics department. I don't know about the other departments. The second thing I wanted to say is that I think, yeah, I flagged this earlier too, that if your rank in net is very, very good, I think in the top 10 or top 5 or something like that, then you are entitled for the Shyama Prasad Mukherjee Fellowship, and many people don't know about it. So that entitles you to 35,000 per month and 40,000 per month. I mean, 35,000 per month for the first 2 years and 40,000 per month for the next 3 years. The third thing is that so when you financially weigh an Indian PhD, so don't forget, I mean, that when you get an Indian PhD, so this is something that does not happen as much in, let's say, universities in the Europe or in the US. At most places, that we get an entitlement in the form of the very good campuses that the Indian universities have, the Indian institutes offer you to live in. So I mean, some of the costs, like you, because you don't have to cook, and you get subsidized food, subsidized electricity, your costs on transportations get really cut down, and there's a sense of secure social as well as uh, physical security that you get when you stay in a campus. So keep this in mind, that I mean, when this is also translated into I mean, in terms of money, then it will certainly add up to something substantial.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I and Karthik can tell you. So, I'm going to France for my PhD, and I was recently discussing with my mother whether or not I will be able to make dosas in France, because France works on nuclear power and they don't have gas cylinders. So, you cannot make dosas in induction. So, I mean, this is just an aside, but there's just so many issues of when you go abroad. You have to you have to get into the culture. You have to get a new house. You have to think about rent. All of that is a lot of work. So yeah, trust me, trust me on that. Okay, um, I
I
think we
would
are
also like
done.
to emphasize,
Yeah,
yeah. So
go ahead.
like Shashank said, like there are lots of things you have to like think about if you go to Europe. Yeah, like he said, like the cooking and all this stuff, like you're finding like rent and doing all this thing. There will be like thing. Can you go back to previous slide, Shashank?
I stopped sharing. Wait, let me share again. Sorry.
So I just want to say, like the in PMRF, the like the money you are going to make from PMRF is same as the saving you are going to do at Europe. So like you can like at most you can save 60,000 in Europe, and in PMRF you will get 70,000. So you like it like if the if you have some financial economical conditions, you can like consider PMRF, and I will encourage you to like get more better score in net get exam. Like it will like it will be very beneficial for you. And I like it's just like personal belief that I believe like the IISER students are like far better than other institutes. Like I just personally found out like they are more engaging compared to some other institutes, and like so I believe like you can do these things. So
Yeah, yeah. Like, so just to emphasize, I can stop sharing now. Yeah, I just have to say, like, you can do this. Like, you can get a good rank in net. It's not difficult. Both me and Abhijit have done we have done very bad in our courses sometimes, and like we aren't like exceptional students. So if we can do it, you can also do it. So, okay, so we are done. I hope this was helpful. We are up for questions now. So any questions?
Yeah, meanwhile, I think we can share our email addresses in the chat. Yeah, meanwhile, I think we can share our email addresses in the chat.
Yes, in the chat. I think they have our email addresses because we sent the email anyway. But yeah, sure. So, any questions in your any doubts?
I will share one more thing. Like it will
Go
be
ahead.
helpful for your interview. So not right now. It's just for interview. Just remember this thing. So there's I found it very convenient. So for the interviews, you can use like this thing. So what I have done is like I have A4 paper, and inside I have wrapped around some plastic, so I can like easily write some stuff here. And like when because in interview they are going to like
To your
say
paper.
like show your calculation something, then you can like show it very clearly. So
Right.
instead of writing pen, you can use this. So it's like post interview thing, so you don't have to worry about this thing, but like it will be helpful like after some time.
Yeah,
I
that
just
would have
wanted
been
to share.
helpful for me. Okay. So, okay. Any questions? Like any comments? We'll be here for let's say a minute or so more. But thank you to Karthik. Thanks Abhijit. Thanks myself
Yeah.
for this session. I hope like we have conveyed to you some important things about applying to PhD in India. If there's any questions you want to ask like later, after a few months, you can always write emails to us. So, okay, if there's no
Excuse
questions,
me, Bhaiya.
yeah, please go ahead.
So, I just wanted to ask. I mean, are the TA duties, TA-ship duties included in the PhD program, whatever the PhD program we are applying for? Are the TA-ship duties included in that? Is it a part of it?
I'm not sure. Like, Abhijit, what's your opinion? I think you will. Depends on the institute,
Yeah,
but
that's
yeah,
I mean, something that you cannot, you don't have one answer for all the Indian
Institute.
institutes in that sense. So, but I'll tell you, for example, IISc, in IISc, you are supposed to do TA duties once in your PhD tenure, but only for one semester. And for that also, you get paid extra money.
That's what I wanted to. That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah,
Like,
I,
Yeah.
do
I
they
think you
pay you
will.
extra for
But
THW
yeah,
duties?
yeah,
I think they will.
but let me tell you that some advisors may just, to improve your teaching skills, may ask you to do TA duties in India. So that culture is there. For that, you don't, I mean, you are not entitled to extra money. So you might
Okay.
have to do TA. For example, this happens in IISER Mohali also. If you talk to, PhDs in maths department, for example, this is very prevalent in maths department IISER Mohali. So most of the answer scripts are evaluated by PhDs only, and they don't get paid extra for it. Yeah. So
Oh,
at
okay,
some
okay.
I think
institutes, your guide will decide this.
maybe if you have good relations, you can demand also to be paid.
Yeah.
But okay, next story. Any more
Thank
questions? So I think Ankit asked in the chat if there's a CPI criteria for getting a PhD in ISC, and he said it's 8.5. Is it 8.5? I don't think so. Um,
No,
Abhijit, what do you?
I think 8.5 is for the CFTI category.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
otherwise it's not 8.5, certainly not.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So, okay, then maybe there are no questions. So feel free to contact us by email or anything. Yeah. Okay, then. See you. Thanks, Karthik. Thanks, Abhijit.
Yeah. Okay, see you all.
See you.
Bye.
Bye, Karthik.
Bye.